Everyone, Jake Smeester, creative content specialist for Amazon Sumerian. I'm hearing a echo of my own voice through these headphones, so I'm going to turn my audio down. Okay. Welcome to this Thursday edition of Office Hours with Amazon Sumerian. And today we are going to be looking at something that is completely unrehearsed. Creating animations. Which is better, timeline or the state machine? There's multiple ways to do things, as I'm sure many of you know, in Sumerian. And there's not always necessarily a better way. It's just preference. So I'm going to look at how to use each one to create a simple animation of a car going up and down the street. I've done this before with some other things in some past broadcasts, but this time I'm going to try to duplicate the same animation using two different methods. So state machine versus a timeline. I'm going to now jump into and anybody out there, welcome to the stream. And any questions that you might have, it doesn't have to be at all related to what I'm doing. What the point of this is for me to be working and experimenting and along with other people, but also a time for people to ask me and other people on our team questions that you might need to solve some issues or problems you're having, or how to get something done, or how to create a certain scene. So feel free to ask out any questions. It doesn't have to be related. And some people say, oh, this has nothing to do with it. You can answer it later. No, I can stop. I can answer it now, because this is the primary thing, is to have a time to answer your questions. Okay, so let's jump over to my screen. Here's my screen. This is Sumerian, and this is the city I've been working on. Now, you might notice that it's a little bit bigger than last time. We really started off with this particular city. It was like this section right here. And that was the city. And then I added on this other section here, which included this bridge. Then if we go on the other side of the bridge, we have what's really even larger part of the city. There's like a factory over here, a train station. The airport is over here. But why is it white? Minus a couple buildings in there. That's because I'm adding textures gradually as I go to this. And so when I pulled this in from TurboSquid, none of the models had the textures applied. I have to apply those separately. And so it just is a little tedious. I just haven't gotten to it. But soon I will have this all operating and textured out, if you will. And something else along those lines. What was I going to say? Oh, the cool thing is that you don't have to apply a texture to each individual building, for example, or each individual car. It's because several of the entities are repeated within this city model. And so because of that, if you apply a texture to one entity, if there's any duplicates of that, it will apply to all of them. For example, the road. There's so many duplicated usages of the road, or of a railroad track, or there's different sections like that. There's several. I mean, there's dozens of them. If you apply a texture to one of them, it applies it to all of them. And so even though when you open up one of these city sections, for example, let me just do that so you can see what I'm saying. And I go open up smallest city. Let's go down here. All right, so all these nature trees, 3.081, 3.082, and so forth. If I applied a texture to just this first one, well, where is the first one? There we go. If I apply a texture to here, it will apply to all of them, and then until you sort of see something different. So that's how I've been applying these textures. I apply it to the first one, then I go to and if it looks like they're all almost the same, then I'll go to the bottom one, and I'll see, is there a material on it? And if I see a material here in the texture input under color diffuse, then I know that there is an actual texture applied. So again, I can skip all this. You're not having to do each one. It still is a little tedious. There's still several you got to do, but it takes maybe 20 minutes for each section. So it's not terrible. But it's just something that's got to be done. And I haven't gotten to it over here. And that actually goes back to another point that we've talked about, is that like when you duplicate an entity, for example, like if you have a sphere and you want to use multiple spheres, and so you just duplicate it and you change the color to one of the spheres, then all of them changes. That's because duplicated entities carry the properties or characteristics of the original and the duplicates. And that can be frustrating sometimes, that you're like, oh, I want a blue and an orange sphere. Well, you have to create one sphere, a blue-orange sphere, and then you have to create another sphere for the orange. You can't just duplicate it and change the color. There are times when that requires more work. At other times, it's actually really helpful, as in the case here, because instead of having to apply textures to everything, you can just do it to one, and it applies to all the duplicates. So it helps in a lot of ways, is the point of all that. Let me just make sure, check the stream. Okay, we are online. We are good. I see myself there. Oops, no, really, that's real creepy. All right, so let's get going. We are going to do some animations using the timeline and the state machine to see which one is better. I think the best way to do it is that I'm going to apply a state machine, or I'm going to apply an animation, let me zoom in, to this taxi and also this truck. And I'm going to have them, I'm pointing at my screen, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to have them go down the road here, and then at the other end of the bridge, I'm going to have them turn around and then go back and then loop. So they are always sort of doing this back and forth thing. Right, where do we want to start? I believe these trucks and taxi are in the city section 2. So what I'm going to do is open up city section 2. So I can't just click on this taxi because it's nested within city section 2. I think it's city section 2. At least it's under one of the city sections. It's going to select the whole thing. So I can't select just down to this child entity. I have to find it. So I'm going to search for taxi. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. All right, so we have several of them. I'm just going to have to try this. Nope. Oh, also, I am drinking a beer out of a Sumerian, Amazon Sumerian pint glass. So I'm on the West Coast, so it's a little early. If you're on the East Coast, then you should join me. Or not, whatever. Or wherever you are, it doesn't really matter. It's an IPA. It's actually a pretty good IPA. All right, that wasn't the right one, so we're going to have to search for the next one. But my computer's really lagging with this whole typing thing. This might be... it's searching for all of them. That's why. So I think it's in city section 2. Well, it can't be in city section 2 because it's not there. So let's go with city section 3. Let's see if we can find it. ECG Taylor. You have iced tea. Does that count? Of course it counts. Beer isn't for everybody. To be honest, I don't even really like IPA that much. Well, I'm starting to like IPA. But hey, I got my taxi. There it is. Great. Which one is it? So what I'm going to do is... I'm going to find this taxi. Oh, it's down here at the bottom, really. Trying to think how to get this up. That's not going to work. That's too slow. Okay. Almost there. All right, we're just going to put it in city section 4 for now. And lastly, we do want this truck. Want land static truck. Is it this one? Nope. It's not a log truck. It's got to be close here. I'm just going to use this one. I'm going to drag this one. Let me get this done, and then I'll explain what I'm doing. I'm also going to add that to city section 4. Okay. Taylor, thanks for joining. I have iced tea. Does that count? Of course. Iced tea is delicious. You are in, I believe, New Mexico. Is it warm in New Mexico right now? I feel like it's probably kind of cool in New Mexico. I don't know. Let me know. Kirby. Hello, sir. Good to have you back. Is the beer from the Ghost Store? No, it's not. It's from a kegerator that's right outside, which is also kind of cool. Very warm up in New Mexico. It's starting to get cold in Seattle, which is bizarre. Actually, I don't know if it's bizarre. It's probably normal, but starting to switch. Starting to switch on us. Okay. The one downside of dealing with such a large model is just getting all these things to move around. All right, so I'm actually going to then, this is weird what I'm doing. I'm just going to now go back to city section 3. Now the reason I'm doing this is just so I can find them quickly. So they're buried obviously within that city section 2, and now I just have them. It's a lot easier to access now that they're within this kind of this middle nest group of city section 3. So I can get to them a lot quicker. All right, so now that I have them, let's start with the taxi. Very warm in New Mexico. I like New Mexico. I haven't been there very much. I'm from Colorado, actually, so I'm, I used to be able to drive across the border, which is nice. And Kirby notes, so it's not from the Ghost Store. It's from a keg outside. But the Ghost Store is pretty cool. It does have lots of great stuff there. All right. So here we go. Taxi. Let's add let's decrease the material. Let's start with a state machine. So, sure. I'm going to go timeline. And toggle the timeline on. So the timeline is, now this is interesting. Even though I applied this, interesting. I applied this timeline component to this taxi, but I still need to drag the taxi down to it. Interesting. Okay, so maybe that's not the best way to do it. What I normally do is, let's go, nope, not import assets. Create entity, driver 360. I see you have a question. Let me just finish this. Add timeline. So I just added a timeline to my entities panel, and then I'm going to drag the taxi down to the timeline. You can drop it here, but really just anywhere in the timeline works. Okay, driver 360. Are there any new tutorials for real estate type tours with Sumerian? What's the latest, greatest way to make a photosphere? David mentioned a way to do it, but using Maya 3D. Okay, let's see. So currently there are, we are working on a demo that allows you to do a virtual tour. It's on the schedule to do that tutorial or to walk through that demo on Twitch, I believe later part of October. The reason why that is that I'm not trying to make a big deal of this, but I'm going on paternity leave soon. And because of that, we're having to put some things on hold, or having to put these Twitch sessions on hold. So that is something that is coming up maybe mid-October, so like a month away. And so, yes, there are ways to do it. Absolutely. There are not currently any tutorials covering that. But let me answer your question in terms of maybe I can describe how to do that. The best way to do that would be, or at least right now, if you're using the state machine, is if you have a bunch of 360. Well, let me ask you a question before. Are you using 360? You said it's photosphere, so I'm assuming you mean using 360 images. Is that the way? Is that what you're meaning? Driver 360? I'll wait for you to respond. Waiting for a response from the chat room regarding doing real estate type tours using Sumerian, and what's the best way to do that. Yes, equal rectangular sphere. All right, so equal rectangular. Okay. Yeah, so this 360 images are a little bit easier to use because you can just apply one of them to a sphere, and then you get, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go to night sphere. We're going to turn it on. I'm getting this weird thing with the night sphere. I don't really know why this is. So it's not really working in terms of viewing. And night sphere. All right, let me turn it back on. All right, notice my background just changed. That's because I have a big sphere. Oh, you can't see my screen. My bad. All right, so I turn on my night sphere. All it is just a sphere and the texture is just color, so it's just black. But what you can do is you can create a big sphere, and then you add a 360 image to it, and it'll wrap itself around that sphere. And if you make the scale negative, then you will be able to see the image from the inside of the sphere. If your scale is positive, you'll be able to see the image from the outside, which doesn't really make sense. So you want to make sure your scale is negative. And I know you say I can't say that. The one you just said, equirectangular. That's a hard one for me to say. So that's the way you would do the sphere. If you want to do the other way, so really like a sky box, you would have to create a, well, you could do a, well, no, that wouldn't work. You would have to create a box. So you'd have to create a box with 6 different sides and add the different parts to those quads or whatever, to that box, and you could group it so it equals one box. So it'd be a little bit more work with the, we're using kind of a handmade sky sphere. But either way, you can do both. And if you do it that way, you can create state machines to where when you click on something within the scene, you could just, I don't know, you could have a box sitting somewhere as just like a trigger thing that when you click on it or hover over it or something, that it'll take you to the next room. So you could really create like an empty entity. If I'm in a room, for example, and there's a doorway, I could create kind of an empty entity around that doorway. So when I click on that doorway, it then takes me to the next room that would, that in real life where that door would actually take you. And all you really would be doing is hiding one sphere or box and then showing another one. And so you would be clicking on something and using the system bus or, emitting events and listening to events. The current room would hide itself, and the one that you're clicking on would then show itself. And then in the same way, if you want to go back to the room, it does the opposite. And then if you want to go to other rooms, you just click on something. So it's really a bunch of spheres stacked on top of each other. And then depending on where you want to click, some would hide themselves, they would show themselves, and then others would hide themselves. So that they're really all you're actually not moving anywhere within the scene, but you're essentially just showing certain spheres or certain rooms and hiding other ones. That's the best way to do it. I hope that answers your question. it would require a lot of state machines, but it's not complicated. It might just be a little tedious. Is there a way to use stereoscopic top-bottom 3D 360 photos? Yes. You would just apply one. So I'm going to go to this night sphere. This night sphere is just a sphere. And under materials, you just apply the 360 image on this texture right here, and it will apply itself to that image. Now, again, if you want to see the image from the inside, you would want to make sure that your values are negative here, not positive. Because if you're inside the sphere, you won't be able to see it. You'd only be able to see it from the outside. So when we're talking about using sky spheres, is what we kind of call them in Sumerian, make sure your scale values are negative. Okay. I can answer more questions on that, but let me go back to this. I guess more importantly, let's go to timeline. Toggle on the timeline. All right. I'm going to zoom out. Going to zoom way out so I can kind of see most of the bridge here. All right, I'm going to first apply keyframes, my initial positions, and I'll do rotation. Scale is not going to change at all, so I'm not going to worry about those. I'm really just dealing with translation and rotation. Getting an interesting UI thing here going on. Okay, now I'm going to take it to the end of my timeline, so that because I want it to be back in the same spot that it starts. So I'm going to take my playhead to the very end, and I'm going to apply the same keyframes. That's not what I meant. Add keyframe. Now I got to select each property and add a keyframe. Oops. Why is this? I'm not sure what I just did there. All right, so now the keyframes are the same for the beginning and end. So if I move this playhead along my 10-second timeline, nothing happens. It's because it's not actually moving. Let's take it to 5 seconds. I'm just going to make it here. And I want it to be at the opposite of here. So I really want it to be over here and facing this taxi to be facing this direction. So let's move it along the... Nope, we don't want that. Guess we need to move along the z-axis. Let's just go with, let's do 1,000, see where it takes us. Too much. Let's go with 600. Didn't seem to move much either, so let's go with 800. That doesn't seem to be working very well. I don't know why that just closed. Did I just delete my timeline? I didn't mean to do that. We're going to undo that. Oh, there it is. I just can't see it. Okay, we're going to remove this keyframe. And maybe we just need to do 100. Let's do 250. So you got some questions there, driver. $7.50. Do we need to go negative 750? I just can't. I can't find my. Let's go with 400. Okay, there we go. Now I'm getting in the right spot. So let's go with 350. A little bit further on. I know it's small, but it's right there. Let's go with 300. Almost. Let's go with 275. And 250, 225. Okay, great. And then let's just move. Gonna move them over here. That's about right. Then we want to rotate them on the y-axis because I want them to face the other way. So I'll just remove that. You should be facing the other way. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just add keyframes to. Actually, I don't need to do that. I'm not going to be moving my on my y-axis. Okay. Is there a way to use I answer that question. Will it display 3D in headset? Can Sumerian show different left and right eye views in VR mode? Yes, it will display in the headset. Can Sumerian show different left and right eye views in VR mode? It will display. I'm not exactly sure what you are trying to accomplish with that second question. Different left and right eye views. I will say this: it will display properly. So if you have a 360-degree image, and you place the HMD headset or your core VR pack inside of that image, and you step into VR, you will be able to see the image. So yes, it will work. So yes, it'll work for 360 photos. It does give the output is a stereoscopic view. So when you actually see, so 3D 360 images are top bottom. Right. So I kind of getting what you're going at. I suppose it depends on. So the answer is 3D 360-degree images are top bottom for right and left eyes. I don't believe Sumerian will break it out like that. If you use just a basic 360-degree image and apply it to a sphere of some kind, that will work correctly. And I don't see a reason not to do it that way, so I'd be interested to hear why you would want, if there's a reason to not. Essentially, it comes down to how the image is stitched. Is it stitched correctly, or is it stitched like the top bottom, or is it stitched as the, I don't really know the term, to be honest, but the 360 image. So you want 3D 360 image. Okay. So you want it to be 3D, which is kind of a different experience, I know, than non-3D, even though you're in VR headset. Okay, I think I'm starting to understand. You're wanting to do a 3D experience. I don't believe that Amazon or the Sumerian does it, allows you to do that at this time, but 360 images work. I don't believe it works with 3D, at least the way that I'm describing the solution, if that helps. All right, let's, I'm going to go ahead and auto loop this, or loop it and just see how it goes. Now, my camera, one thing that's important is that my camera, I want my orbit cam to be my main camera. So we can actually see what's going on. Let's turn back on our timeline entity and see how it works. Play it again. It's probably kind of small. Maybe I can. All right, it is working the way I want it to yet. Now, there's other steps we got to take. Let's see, we start. The y-axis is a little bit interesting because it's like rotating. Oh, I know. We don't want it to be. Let's see. Y doesn't want to be 180. I think we want it to be 0 actually here. There we go. Okay. Yeah, we don't want it to be 0 because it is, or we don't want it to be, because that was rotating 360 degrees, which we don't want. We want it to be actually rotate 180 degrees. So my math was wrong. Okay, now let's go to let's just go to right here. And let's see, the value I want to keep is 13.13 for the x-axis, because I don't want it to actually really get off that axis until like right here. So I'm going to select here, add a keyframe, but I want to go with, what is that value I wanted? 13.1366. 13.1366. And I can increase the size here. And then likewise, I want it to be right about here, because I want to keep it on that same, I want to keep it on the same street. So I want to keep my x value the same until right about here. So I'll go back. Negative 5.9634. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know why I'm not copying and pasting. That would make a lot more sense. Okay, so we'll go over here with my playhead, and then we'll paste that value in. No. I need a keyframe. So we'll select this value, and then we will make it that. Pressing play, see how this works. Okay. Another thing we're seeing is that it's rotating as it's moving along the road. We don't want that. We want it to rotate really when it's just right here, while right as it's drives over the median and such. So the value we want to hold then for the y-axis, let me just press stop. The value we want to hold is 180. You can probably remember that, but I'm going to copy that either way. And let's keep it in line with the other keyframes. So I want to be right in line with these other ones. So I'm just going to use these keyframe navigation buttons. So I'm going to go here and it'll be perfectly lined up with this keyframe. And now I can select the y rotation value property, and I'm going to type in -180. And then you'll see it just does a quick little rotation there. So we go, car goes straight, doesn't move. All that's really changing right now is the Z. So it's just moving along the road, and then it gets to these two keyframes, and it repositions, drives over the median, turns around, and it goes over. But we got to do the same thing over here because now the taxi is rotating as it's driving, not what we want. So let's figure out what those... $120, or should be around 0. So then we're gonna select here, add a keyframe, and put 0. Let's play and see how that works. Again, any questions you might have does not have to be related to this. Animations in the timeline are tedious, as I'm sure you've noticed. Keyframes are always tedious. It doesn't really matter if you're using After Effects or... Yeah, they're tedious. Just the nature of keyframes. So it's definitely a quick little drive over the median, but we have a looping timeline. Now, some things to notice. So it's doing what we want it to do. That's great. Then some things to remember when you're doing animations or using the timeline is that get your starting keyframes and your ending keyframes set up first. So remember how I did that here? I set up these keyframes. I already had it in the right position, so I just added keyframes. So locked in its initial position. And then I went to its last position, and because it was the same as the starting, I just added more keyframes. So then I had those set first. If I wanted it to be different, of course, I would have moved it somewhere totally different for the final keyframes. But because I wanted it looping, I want those beginning and ending keyframes to be the same. Then I went, there's other ways to do this, but then I went halfway. I'm like, okay, I know the path that I want this animation to go on. So I'm going to go to the other end of the bridge, and being kind of like, the halfway point would be around up here if it was going consistently. So then I went to the 5 second marker, and then I added in these keyframes. And then as you notice, it's like, okay, it's drifting, turning and drifting over the median and everything. It doesn't look realistic. So then you got to add some other keyframes in there to position it up. So then I'm like, okay, I want it to really stay the same all the way here. I want it to stay the same, and I want it to start turning right here. So that's when I added some keyframes in here for the rotation and where I want it to drive over the median. Then likewise on the other end of this animation, I did the same thing where I went to the very end, and that's when I added in some keyframes again, so it would then lock, or it would then turn around. Make sense? I think that makes sense. All right, so there we go. There's an animation using timeline. Let's try to do something similar, but with the state machine. I have never done this with the state machine before. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to do today, the idea was I'd love to experiment with something I haven't done. So let's try using this truck. Now, the difficult thing I know that right up front is that the nice thing about using a timeline is that I can scrub the playhead through and I can see where it's at. I can't do that using a state machine. So let's see which is easier. I'm going to go find. Where did I put it? City section 3. Okay, the tanker. I'm not going to be using. I'm going to zoom out just so I can see where I want him to go. First of all, let's move him to the other end. So these will be essentially in opposing locations. So they're both kind of operating on we're using a 10-second timeline. I think the reason why my car was over there. Okay, right. Okay, for the taxi. There we go. Adding a state machine. And let's add a behavior. I'm going to call it tanker. If it would actually type it in there, a tanker. Guess I didn't take it. Tanker animation. We're going to use tween moves this whole time because we want to show tween moving. So in between, we want to show the animation. So anytime you're using an animation in the state machine, that's what the tween action is for. So we're just going to we'll just use state 1 as the name. We don't need to change that. Then we're going to go tween move. Any other questions out there? The chat is kind of quiet. So if you have any questions, please answer or ask. So the thing is, with right up front, I know that I don't know exactly where. I know that I want it to be here after a few seconds. Well, no, this is probably gonna be different. So let's figure this out. I'm gonna move. I gotta look at my transform entities here. This is the starting position. Nope. Let's move the tanker right over here. We'll say 567. I'm going to go ahead and copy that amount. But then I don't actually want it to be there. I'm going to undo that. I'm just trying to figure out the location that I want. So then I'm going to now open up my tanker animation. And want it to go there. One thing I realized, I do need the other. I need this. Go 13.3. Something that has been requested, which is a really good idea, is to be able to, oops, I think it was actually here, be able to copy and paste full transform values. That would be really helpful. Something that has been requested, something that I believe is on our roadmap. And what was the other one? 15. All right, let's just play it and see what happens. I want to uncheck relative, something didn't look right there. I may have had some values off too. Let's try playing it again. All right, he went there. But he went. The tanker went too fast. Partly it's because I have it set at 1 second. So we want to do 10 seconds, which is 10,000 milliseconds. So we'll just do that. So there we go. It's driving. Actually, I guess we probably want to do 5 seconds because this is roughly 5 seconds. It's fine. It doesn't have to be the same on the same time. All right. And I'm trying to think what to do next. We're going to add another. Really, we're just going to use a bunch of tween moves. So I'm going to duplicate this state. Let's go rename this state 2. And I want it to be on the other side of the road. So what is the value that I just changed there? It's kind of hard to see. All right, so I'm going to place it here. I'll explain what I'm doing in a second. All right, that's the value I want. All I'm going to be doing is changing the X rotation for the moment. So I'm just going to be copying that, but I want to undo it. I don't actually want to keep it there. I'm just changing this to visualize, I'm visualizing where I want it, and then I'm taking note of those values so I can then plug them into my action. Okay. So that's going to change. And then the translation, or I'm sorry, the Y value is going to then flip by 180 degrees. So let's just do 180 plus 15, which is 195. And we don't want it to take 10 seconds. We just want it to maybe take 1 second. So let's start with state 1 to go to state 2 and see how it looks. Press play again. Tanker is driving a lot slower. Something happened there. I know what happened is that it's not. I added an extra 9 in there, so it's way off. So let's stop this and restart it. And let's maybe take this one down. Let's maybe do 8 seconds instead. I know I was saying I don't like IPAs, but this IPA is actually, it's pretty good. Maybe I'm just becoming older where I like IPAs. You know, maybe that's the case. Maybe it's just a really good IPA. All right, so it's the truck. The tanker is driving around. Oh, I know. Okay. I just realized what's going on here. We actually don't want. I was changing the tween move Y translation, so it was like moving it way up in the sky. What I need is add action. I need tween rotate. That's what I needed. Okay, so we'll do that. 195. doing? Yeah, 195. But it'll be interesting to see what happens here, because I think it'll do the tween move first, and then it'll rotate it. So it'll probably... Right. And it's actually not the right number. It's 195 isn't the right number. What we need is... we need 180 plus, I'm going to just copy in there that number, so it's really 186. We'll see how that works. Okay, then it stops. Okay. We really needed to go. It's not quite there. So am I trying to do... Maybe I'll just make it 180. We'll just see how that works. All right, now we need to go back to the other side. So we're going to duplicate state 1 again. Delete this transition. Let's call it state 2. And we needed to go back to the initial position, which is... I think it's the 218. I think that's what we want to be different on the z-axis. So I think we're just controlling the z-axis. So we're going to put that in there. Let's see how it works. Driver 360. Are there any new features or updates coming to Sumerian that you are excited about? I'm thinking. There are some new features and updates. But we don't... Yeah, we're not discussing them until they're actually released. But yeah, there are several. I get more excited really about the different demos that we actually have. So different things that people are working on and creating. That's what I typically get more excited about than updates and features. Yeah, that's actually what I kind of that's what I pay attention to a little bit more too, is what just people are working on. So yes, there are. And the more the demos are the thing that get me excited. So like the 360-degree virtual tour thing. So the thing that you're asking about actually is one of the things I'm really pumped about. It's a really cool demo. We're excited to show it off. But we'll be doing that next month. Let's see. Something was not happening here. I know. I changed the value of the wrong. I did the wrong. So 567. But that's more easy to 567. That's actually really easy to memorize. Actually, we're gonna take that and put it here. I just did the wrong one. Change the wrong state. 567. So it wasn't actually moving in that first state. Nothing was changing. Right, we got a tanker moving. Turn around, then it moves. But as you notice, it's driving again kind of over the median. So what we need to do is we need to do something to lock, or I got to change a value so that it's actually staying on the right, on the correct x-axis. So I need this x-axis. 13.3 is what I need here. No, I'm sorry. I need this x-axis. Because we don't want it drifting. Right? That should work. I'm going to duplicate that state 2. Let me get this tiled correctly. So now we have state 3. Now we have state 4. Really, this should just comprise 4 states. So we should be just about done here. I see you have another question, Driver 360. Let me answer that in just a moment. So we want to take this. I'm going to unselect the relative. Oops, nope. My mouse is changing that. And, oh my goodness. All right. Let's see, we want the initial. We want to take that initial x for the tween move. Now we want the tween move to match what it was before. Let's see if this works. Ha, good question. I'll let Taylor answer that question. Yep, that's not quite what we want. Really what we want is the tween move. We want it to be this last state, the tween move. We want these values to be the same as the initial position of the tanker. So let's figure out what that is. And I know that the problem was the z-axis. So we're going to take those, put them back over right in here on the z-axis. Why did it do that again? It didn't take it. That's why. All right, I think this is going to work. I think we're ready. Okay, we got some good chat here. Physically based rendering, PBR. Thank you, Tyler, for chiming in there. And Kirby, if you're using Sumerian with an HMD, which is your favorite? I still prefer HTC Vive. However, Oculus Go is a fantastic price and consumer friendly, but seems to be used mostly for consuming media. You can answer that. Let me just watch here to make sure that this tanker does what I want it to do. I think because it didn't rotate the way I wanted it to do. I think I actually need to have relative turned on there, which actually makes sense for the rotate, because we actually want just to rotate. That would actually probably be an easier way, is that if you have relative turned off, then it's just a set rotation value. But if you have relative, it's just saying, okay, rotate 180 degrees based onto your local coordinates. That's exactly what happens there. Yeah, so it looks like for the rotation, keeping relative clicked is an easier way to go for the tween rotation. Not the tween move, though. All right, so there we go. 2 different ways to do an animation. Thanks for your patience with that. As you can tell, it's a little tedious both ways. Animations are just not an easy thing to do manually like we're doing here. I guess it's up to you to decide which one you like better. There are pros and cons. There's things I like about the state machine. It's a lot simpler. Like just seeing like this, it's just 4 different actions and a couple different states. But as you can tell, getting those values from one to the next, like I have to go back and forth and copy and paste, and it's just a little more tricky. It also, you'd have to have a lot more states. So right now, if I wanted to go like in a circle, if I wanted my car to go or like kind of go curve like that instead of just like turn, then you'd have to add in a lot more states kind of for each of those kind of movements, if that makes sense. You could actually insert in between. You could insert a timeline to have it just move around like that. So that's actually possible. So that you could fire an emit message to. You could combine the two essentially to make it really what you want. And so to be honest, that might be the best way, is that combining the two for certain things. Is that when I'm trying to get this thing to move from one side to the other, tween moves are really great. But if I wanted to be really specific, then using timelines might be a little bit easier. So I'll leave it up to you to decide which one is better for animations. So Kirby, I'm guessing you're asking everybody. I will answer your question. I like the Oculus, the Rift, to be honest. And the reason I like it is because it's a lot easier it's more mobile in the sense that it doesn't take up as much space. You don't need to mount things in the corner of a wall. But it is smaller in terms of the range in which it can do. So, but I just like the Oculus Go. I like the way it fits a little bit better. Here is something that I must admit. I have not actually tried the Oculus Go. So I need to try that. We have them in the office. I just haven't used it yet. So that's something I need to actually try and experiment with. So between the two, I like the Oculus for the most part over the HTC, but the Vive does have some really great uses in terms of the sensors are probably a little bit more reliable because of where you have to mount them. So there's pros and cons to both. Big Mermaid seeing a lot heavier. Is it performance? I'm not sure. Honestly, we'll have to see, but I bet it's worth it if it's there. PBR. PBR has a lot of potential, a lot of people excited, and it'll be exciting to see how it affects a lot of users and people that are in the community creating 3D scenes. So, yeah, that's my response to those. I'm done. I have a little bit of beer left. Any other questions people want to ask? That is good. I actually might get another one after this. All right. I'm going to cut it off then. I'm going to throw up this resources slide. So if you please join our Slack community, let me throw that up if you are not. I'm guessing I know most of the people on the chat I see here are. And let me get rid of the topic. There we go. All right. There we go. Let me slouch down so you can see. Slack.sumerian.world. Please join our community there. Love to see you there. You can find myself as well as all the other Sumerian team members marked by AWS _ somebody. So I am AWS Jake Thank you, Taylor, for joining. My man from New Mexico. Thank you for being here. Driver360. Thanks for all your great questions. I hope Driver360, I answered them thoroughly. If you have more questions, please hit me up on Slack. You can find me there as well. Again, I might be sort of MIA for a little bit due to the paternity leave. So just be warned if I don't respond. It's not because I don't care. It's because I turned off Slack. That's probably what will happen for at least a little bit. Yeah. Enjoy Sumerian. Enjoy this. There's some really cool stuff. Hope you're enjoying it. And we'll talk to you in the next stream. Thanks.